With a bustling port, lively marina scene, Portimão is a tourist hotspot for ocean lovers and golfers with an abundance of golden beaches. A gold medal is the top prize up for grabs in the sprint. Next live, it's time for MotoGP. First opened all the way back in November 2008. This is the 20th time MotoGP has made a visit to Portugal. Our first visit here, of course, was a memorable one for Miguel Oliveira, the home crowd favourite, back in 2020. First ever Portuguese Grand Prix was back in 2000. Held in Estoril, of course, until 2012. Portimão, our current venue, well, it's spectacular. It's called the rollercoaster for a very good reason. It's a white knuckle ride around 4.6 kilometres, 2.85 miles, 15 corners, 6 left, 9 of them right, hard braking down the hill into 1, 5 and into 13. High tight stress zone in that final corner, you pound for start finish straight. Lots of overtaking opportunities as well here in Portimão. This, of course, was a very controversial incident last year involving Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia at turn 5. So just under a fortnight to go in the sizzling heat of Sepang, our overseas tour came to a triumphant end for Gresini Racing's Alex Marquez, as he was eventually go on after this move on Pecco Bagnaia to secure his third victory of 2025. In a weekend, the Gresini rider would ultimately secure second overall in the World Championship. Pecco Bagnaia started to fade out of podium contention after his sprint victory in Malaysia. A very rare rear tyre puncher coming the way of the factory Ducati star. That allowed Alex Marquez then to celebrate second in the World Championship in the best possible way. He won the Malaysian Grand Prix. He was fastest in both practice sessions here on Friday in Portimão, but a crash, a crucial crash, a decisive stage of this morning's Q2 sees Alex Marquez start from the middle of the second row in 5th place. In what is still an open battle for third overall in the World Championship between Marco Bezzecchi, Pecco Bagnaia and Pedro Acosta. Those three separated by just 31 points with 2 rounds remaining in 2025. Well, those three have qualified inside the top 4 for this 12-lap sprint this afternoon and the main Grand Prix tomorrow here in Portugal, over 25 laps tomorrow afternoon. Top qualifier of that trio who we've just mentioned, vying for third place overall in the standings, is Marco Bezzecchi on the factory. He delivered a brilliant 137.556 on a full dry circuit after this morning's FP2 was run in damp conditions. Bez's 4th pole position of the season. That's the most poles Aprilia have ever had in a single MotoGP campaign. Just their 13th ever pole. In terms of Bez, it's his 8th in the MotoGP World Championship. On the front row with Pedro Acosta, who was on the front row for the first time in 25 Grand Prix since he was on pole in Japan last year. And completing a star-studded heavyweight front row of the grid is Fabio Quartararo, who once again delivered another stunning Saturday morning performance. Fastest in the opening Q1 session to get himself into Q2, and once again on the front row of the grid for the 10th time. Most front rows in a single season for Quartararo since 2021. Of course, Fabio, a 2-time winner here at the Algarve International Circuit. It's Matt Burton, though, still in the commentary box, talking you through all of the race action here in Portimão with Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. With Pecco Bagnaia and Alex Marquez on row 2, joined by Johann Zarco, who's had his best qualifying in 10 rounds since the Sachsenring in Germany. The 3rd time this year Zarco's qualified inside the top 6. This one looks like it's going to be pretty tasty, Lewis. As we just mentioned, Bezzecchi, Bagnaia and Acosta in that fight for third in the championship, starting inside the top 4. Alex Marquez, we know, was super rapid on Friday and has got great race pace. Joan Mir also maybe a dark horse, coming from the head of row 3 in 7th place. This could be a very special sprint indeed. Very good indeed. The leading contenders all look quite evenly matched when you look at their pace at all stages of the weekend. You could argue that the favourite for the sprint victory, certainly when the day began, is starting furthest back of those key contenders. Here he is, Alex Marquez, who dropped the bike and dropped the ball in qualifying 2, going down at turn 3. Of course, we'll never know ultimately how fast he would have gone had he not crashed.
But in the end, he made that crucial error, which means that Marc Marquez has secured the BMW M Award, which he found out when he was shopping in his local supermarket in Cervera back at home. Careful in the fruit shop, sometimes in between the avocados. A car could appear, he says. P.S. I'll let you take it for a ride, Alex Marquez, in reference to the new BMW that Alex Marquez's crash has ensured that Marc Marquez will earn at the end of this year.
What I want to know is why Marc is grocery shopping when he should have been supporting his brother surely in qualifying in Portimão. Yeah, Alex has finally read that message on screens. He's cracking a big smile. Not the first time in his illustrious career, is it, that Marc Marquez has won a nice new shiny BMW. Probably the first time, though, he's been sat at home to collect the keys. So yeah, continuing wishes to Marc on his speedy recovery as he recovers from his season-ending shoulder injury over in Mandalika. So Marco Bezzecchi on pole position for the fourth time in 2025. Previous poles for Bez at the Red Bull Ring in Austria and in front of his home crowd in Misano, and most recently in Mandalika. The omen's pretty good in terms of sprints of late from pole for Bezzecchi, because when he was on pole in Misano, he won the sprint. When he was on pole in Mandalika, he won the sprint as well.
It didn't necessarily translate into Sunday success, but Bezzecchi will worry about that tomorrow. I think what he's got to worry about immediately at the start of this sprint is a bright orange bullet going past him on his right. Pedro Acosta on board the KTM, which we know is lightning in a straight line, lightning off the start. Pedro Acosta is also perhaps the best defensive rider in wheel-to-wheel battle in MotoGP. So I think the smart money would be on Acosta leading at the end of the first sector of this Tissot sprint, and it will then be up to Marco Bezzecchi to try and find a way back past it.
Acosta has found some top form on sprint Saturdays of late. In our last 4 sprints, he's been on the podium in 3 of them. Third places in Motegi and also in Australia and in Malaysia. But it's catch Bezzecchi if you can. Of course, in the main Grand Prix tomorrow, despite all of his recent podium success, Marco Bezzecchi has only the 1 Grand Prix victory to his name, and that was a rather lucky one, wasn't it, when Fabio Quartararo's rear ride height device decided to give up when he was comfortably clear in that Silverstone battle. So let's go down and speak to well, Hervé Poncharal, Red Bull KTM Tech 3 boss. Pol Espargaro once again doing an absolutely sterling job replacing the injured Maverick Vinales. And Air Bastianini, he always works his way forward, doesn't he, from low qualifying positions. Let's get the thoughts from Hervé with Jack.
Yeah, Hervé down on the grid with me once again after a phenomenal performance from Paul, the fastest retired rider in the world. You look on the grid here, ahead of Fermin Aldeguer, ahead of Ayagura, ahead of 2 other KTMs as well. The job he continues to do is so impressive, Hervé.
Oh yeah, it's you know, it's always more impressive when it's unexpected. And you know, when we called Paul for the first time to replace Maverick, you know, we didn't know what to expect. Paul made his clear decision, you know, was to retire, not to race too much, and more testing. And you always wonder, you know, how is he going to take it? But Paul is the same Paul we had, you know, when he was a proper contracted racer. He's full of life, full of enthusiasm, full of passion. And I have to say that he's got 2 hats also when he's riding for us. You know, he's got the hat of the rider, but he's got the hat also of the test rider. And we don't know, but during a Grand Prix like that, we ask him to test so many things. And sometimes during the same session, you know, he goes out with very different bike, with 2 different bikes, with different feelings. And so to do that performance without having, you know, the same bike that you can fine-tune, you know, run after run, is even more impressive. For sure the speed is there, because as you mentioned, there is only 1 KTM ahead of him, is Pedro Acosta, who is the KTM benchmark and star at the moment. Yeah, we are very happy, because, you know, this is replacing Maverick with a very high level, but also the atmosphere, the feeling he brings into the box is fantastic, and Paul is unique for that.
You know Pedro so well from your time last year. We've been saying all weekends, this feels like the opportunity for him onto the front row for the first time. How do you think he'll be feeling?
Remember last year was round 2 here, and he was on the podium. So I think it's just a matter of time before he's on the top step of the podium, and I very much agree with you. That could be today and maybe also tomorrow. So if I would have some money to spend, I would put some of it on Pedro. Clearly, he's outstanding. KTM works well here, and he's got everything it takes to master the Portimão racetrack. So let's see, but you could have an orange bike on the top step today.
You've got plenty of money, Hervé, so I imagine that's a big bet. Good luck.
Not yet.
He's got a lot of money, of course. He's just sold the Tech 3 MotoGP team to ex-Formula 1 boss Gunther Steiner. I've seen a new KTM Tech 3 principal Richard Coleman. Will be very much a figurehead of the French project next year. He was here last time out in Sepang. He's once again here, just about getting ready to pick up the reins of Hervé Poncheral's team. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, for all of you at home, we know you're all big fans of Hervé Poncheral. He does have an official invite to join myself and Lewis in the commentary box at some point during the season finale in Valencia. He has not declined as yet, and he is under a lot of pressure. Don't worry, we're going to keep exerting that pressure on him. We are expecting Monsieur Poncheral to be with us at some stage next weekend in Valencia, of course, as he bows out on one of the longest careers in Grand Prix history. He will be very much missed.
And he will be very emotional, I'm sure, over the course of next weekend. He is part of the MotoGP furniture. It will not quite be the same without him here. And he's certainly got plenty of reasons, as he said, to be optimistic about this sprint. Pol Espargaro going from 10th on the grid and looking to fight his way up into the points, and we certainly know from recent experience that Enea Bastianini will go forwards from wherever he starts. He starts up in 16th place after a reasonably strong qualifying one in partly damp conditions earlier on today. As we're on board then with Marco Bezzecchi. 3 different manufacturers on the front row, none of which are Ducatis. Second time in the last 3 Grand Prix we've been able to say that. It is Aprilia, KTM and Yamaha who make up the front row of the grid today.
We know some of you are joining us for the first time this weekend, so just to cover off some very, very quick housekeeping. You just saw there Nicolo Buliga, World Superbike runner-up, finishing second to Toprak Razgatlioglu for the 2nd season in a row. He's got a dream scenario ahead of him, replacing Marc Marquez in the factory. Ducati Buliga's qualified in 18th place, ahead of regulars Miguel Oliveira and Somkiat Chantra. We just heard, of course, from Hervé Poncheral, Pol Espargaro replacing Maverick Vinales, Lorenzo Savadori in again for Jorge Martin. And unfortunately, we are missing Raul Fernandez, who did start this Grand Prix of Portugal. And it started with a very heavy crash at turn 2 yesterday. He did return to action both yesterday afternoon and this morning, but after that damp FP2 session, Raul Fernandez, concerns about damage to his left shoulder, and with just one more round and a very important post-season test at Valencia in just a few days' time, in conjunction with the Trackhouse race team, Raul Fernandez has decided to withdraw from the remainder of this Portuguese Grand Prix. So now just 21 riders lining up for the sprint and the Grand Prix tomorrow.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty wise decision, isn't it, from Raul Fernandez and Trackhouse, looking at the bigger picture, which will leave Ayagura going it alone for the American team this weekend. He did a fine job, actually, earlier in the weekend to book his place in qualifying 2 and take 12th place on the grid, further underlining that Aprilia have put that Sepang blip firmly behind them and are much more like their old selves here this weekend.
He's done a lot of sprint winning of late, has Bezzecchi, as he comes to pole position. Sprint wins in Misano and in Mandalika, and most recently in Phillip Island. He's clearly going to be one of the standout contenders. Both Pedro Acosta and Alex Marquez yesterday were very quick to identify Bezzecchi as a serious threat to their victory aspirations this afternoon and tomorrow. So there you can see, for the first time since the Japanese Grand Prix last year, a KTM parked on the front row of the grid. Pecco Bagnaia, another one that's got plenty of potential and pace in this sprint this afternoon, 4th place on the grid for the Italian. Fabio Quartararo, as mentioned, just doing again an outstanding job on the factory Yamaha. Both he and Jack Miller on Yamahas coming out of Q1. Quartararo making a better fist of it in the 2nd session on the front row for the 10th time this season. Although, to be fair, Miller also had a pretty strong Q2 as well. He put the Pramac Yamaha in between Joan Mir and Fabio De Gianantonio on row 3 in 8th place. That's only the 8th time in 21 rounds this year that Miller's going to be starting inside the top 10.
Arguably has Quartararo to thank for that. I'm sure the Miller will saying he's right, saying that I did that lap all on my own, but he did have the reference of Quartararo up ahead just to help him around. Bezzecchi, Acosta, Quartararo then is your front row of the grid. Aprilia, KTM and Yamaha, each of them starting hard front, soft rear. Bagnaia, Alex Marquez and Zarco, top Honda in 6th. Joan Mir 7th from Jack Miller and Fabio Di Gianantonio, who's become a bit of a sprint specialist in 2025. Pol Espargaro, Fermin Aldeguer and Ayagura on the 4th row ahead of Marini. Once again, caught out by a heavyweight Q1. 13th for him ahead of Brand Binder and Frankie Morbidelli, all the way down in 15th place. He did not have a particularly enjoyable Saturday morning. In 16th, we find Enea Bastianini ahead of Alex Rins and the debutant Nicolo Buliga, who has done his general calls absolutely no harm at all this weekend. He's been strong throughout the weekend. P18 for him. Miguel Oliveira, the home favourite, 19th, ahead of Lorenzo Savadori and Songkyak Chantra. And certainly from scanning that grid, everybody hard front, soft rear, with the exception of Rins and Chantra.
So less than 15 minutes then it is to lights out for our penultimate sprint of 2025. Of course, we had our first ever sprint right here in Portimão to kick off the 2023 World Championship. It was the 2023 season that Bagnaia kicked off in sensational style, taking the double win from pole position. A very emotional, a very special weekend for Miguel Oliveira. Home Grand Prix, doesn't matter when they come, they're always special occasions, but this one carries that little bit of extra significance for the number 88, who for the time being at least, of course, moving over to World Superbikes, replacing Toprak Razgatlioglu in BMW's official factory squad next season. This, as it stands right now, potentially Miguel's final fling in front of his home crowd here in Portimão. So Pecco Bagnaia with big hopes for a medal in this sprint, coming up from 4th place on the grid, and they'll be giving close on the progress of Nicolo Buliga, aren't they, as well, the factory, the Cati squad. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Davide Tardozzi, with Jack.
Yeah, we're actually down here alongside the number 11 of Nicolo Buliga. Davide, once these MotoGP bikes go racing, so much changes. What have you said to Nicolo ahead of his debut in the sprint?
Yeah, I think that as we said since the beginning of the weekend, we would like him to make experience. He makes some small mistake during the practice in the Q1, but it's obvious that not knowing the tire, the device of the bike, and the MotoGP in total, I think that whatever he will do, it's fine for us. It's a learning curve, and I'm sure that in Valencia will be even faster. But yeah, you have to learn.
For Pecco, starting from the 2nd row of the grid, this feels like an important test. In sprints all year, he's been unable to make overtakes, unable to feel comfortable despite the 2 victories. How big is this to understand where he's level at and how much he's improved?
Yeah, I think that today is not a bad day. I think that he can prove that he can fight for the 3rd place of the championship with Bezzecchi, that this morning did a fantastic lap. But in the end, I think that Alex Marquez will fight for the podium together with Pecco, Acosta and Bezzecchi.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Thanks to Davide Tardozzi. Thanks as always, Jackie. In the last 8 sprints, Pecco Bagnaia has scored points in just 2. They have been with victories as well in Motegi and last time out at Sepang in Malaysia. We just caught a quick glimpse there of Johan Zarco, who's had an excellent weekend so far, to be fair, as the 35-year-old Frenchman. He was 6th at the end of play yesterday. 6 he starts on the grid for Castrol Honda LCR. The only other 2 times Zarco's qualified inside the top 6 this season, they've been front rows in Argentina and at the Sachsenring.
It's fair to say that as that Honda has changed, Johan Zarco has found it slightly difficult to change with it, but he did build some confidence in Sepang, even if the results might not necessarily back that up. 12th in the Grand Prix as he ran out of tyre quite spectacularly in the latter stage of the Grand Prix. Getting a tyre to the end has been KTM's Achilles heel in recent times, but Pedro Acosta shouldn't be concerned about that in the sprint today. How concerned should Aprilia be about Acosta and the general challenge up behind pole sitter Marco Bezzecchi? Paolo Bonoros with Jack.
Yeah, Paolo, the start, as always, is important, but that KTM is a rocket off the line, and Pedro is a nightmare to get past. It feels like an important first lap.
Absolutely important. It is a key to stay in the front, create a gap, and yeah, in the sprint is every time shorter and faster. So it's necessary to trust on the bike. And to be honest, since this morning we found something, and the confidence with the bike of Marco raised up compared yesterday, because yesterday we struggled a bit. And yeah, finger crossed and wait. Good luck. Thanks so much.
Well, they sound very confident, don't they? Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Palabinora. They've already found something this morning in FP2, albeit damp for most of that session, and in qualifying this morning then. So he's going to be a real tough proposition to beat, isn't he, in this upcoming sprint. We just saw there Pedro Acosta getting himself in the zone. Of course, so much talk about Acosta potentially winning his first Grand Prix. He's never won a sprint either, has he, in MotoGP? This feels like one of his golden opportunities to get that first gold medal. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Pit Barrow. Who's with Jack?
Well, Pit, as the guys are just saying, still waiting for the first gold medal in a sprint. The victory potentially in the Grand Prix we'll look at tomorrow, but this looks like a big opportunity.
Yes, but like I told you before, we are really happy that we are there to perform, to fight for the podium. That's the target. So we just don't want to. I don't want to talk like the next big thing is just to win. I'm really happy if we can have a solid base and fight for the podium more consistent, and that's what happened lately. But the performance Pedro is putting in this weekend again is just amazing. So from front row, we should expect a strong race.
Having said that, you'd like a win though.
Yeah, of course I would be. You would hear me scream the loudest from all the guys in the paddock, but yeah, let's keep the feet on the ground and go for a podium ride this weekend again, and then if the win is around the corner, he will grab it. If the chance is there, we know how much he wants it, and but just let him perform. He will do it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no question that he has got the talent to get the job done. As mentioned in Sepang, though, does he have the tools in this particular 12-lap sprint? It's a mouth-watering front row of the grid here, isn't it? Marco Bezzecchi looking so good once again on the factory Aprilia RSGP. After his form took a surprise dip last time out in the heat and humidity of Malaysia. Alongside him, Acosta, who's so hungry for that first success in MotoGP, and Fabio Quartararo once again upholding factory Yamaha honour. Those three on that front row, covered by just over 0.3 of a second. There is Fabio Quartararo, as he so often does, coming to the grid late. Well, he looks certainly relaxed, doesn't he? He looks in chilled mood, does Fabio. He's a two-time MotoGP winner here previously. Now, at the front row, we were probably expecting it to feature Alex Marquez, but his crash at turn 3 sees him on the middle of the second row in P5. Fermin Aldeguer's got work to do from 11th on the grid. Let's get the thoughts of Gresini boss Michele Messina with Jack.
Michele, obviously a big mistake from Alex this morning to find himself on the second row of the grid. In the sprint in particular, has that cost him the chance to fight for victory, or can he still do it from the second row?
I think that also from the second row we can fight for the victory. Of course, it's not the qualify we wanted, but a small mistake could happen, and at the end it was not too bad to start in the second row in the middle of the road. So we will try to keep the front of the group immediately. Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Michele Messina, thanks to Jack, as always. Nicolo Bulega, well, this is a real journey into the unknown, isn't it, as far as the Ducati World Superbike star is concerned. So much for him to learn, as Davide Tarlotti said, over our 37 racing laps here in Portimão, coming up shortly. Of course, he's never actually started in competitive action. A GP25, has never raced Michelin tyres, has to cope with the carbon brakes and how they change over the course of distance races. All the sort of electronic gadgets and rider aids now that are completely different to World Superbikes. A lot more sophisticated electronic controls as well. I'd imagine he's had his head fried at times so far here this weekend, Nicolo Bulega, which just shows what an outstanding job he has done to have been so close to out-qualifying the likes of Bastianini and Alex Rins and co. Well, we just mentioned the fact that Johann Zarco's had his third best qualifying of the season so far. What can he do from 6th place on the grid? Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Lucio Cecchinello.
Yeah, big return to form for Johann Zarco this weekend, Lucio. Yesterday he was speaking about fighting for the front row and fighting for the podium, and now that he's on the front 2 rows of the grid, I guess it's still the same. Can he go with these front guys?
never say never. Everything can happen during the race. I think that the Alex Marquez Bagnaia has a little bit more advantage on the race pace. According with the comment of Johan, he can make 1 or 2 laps, with very fast pace. But then after he has some more complaint regarding the rear grip. So he believes that the competitor has a slightly advantage.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks as always to Lucio Cecchino. Thanks again to Jack. Yes, Johan Zarco's best sprint finish of the season came very early on. It was a 4th place in round 2 at Tomás de Rio Hondo, when he did start from the front row of the grid in 3rd place. Pedro Acosta, we see repeated shots of him with the shades on. The shark ready to show his teeth in this upcoming sprint. Of course, he really did light up MotoGP here in Portimão on just his 2nd appearance 18 months ago now. I don't think any of us, when he finished on the podium in just his 2nd Grand Prix, thought we'd be turning up to his 40th MotoGP start, and he is still chasing a first sprint or Grand Prix victory. Is this Acosta's weekend?
It's certainly his best chance in 2025, and so often we hear team managers saying the right things before a sprint, saying the most important thing is that we get the information we need ahead of the long race tomorrow. I'd hazard a bet that there are no thoughts about that in the mind of Pedro Acosta right now. His thought is about one thing and one thing only, and that is the gold medal.
That lovely picture, a picture of his young self on the back of the crash helmet for Miguel Oliveira here this weekend. Just a reminder of the journey he has been on. What a journey he has been. Winners in Moto3, Moto2 and in MotoGP. 5 times a winner with KTM. Of course, KTM's most successful MotoGP rider, isn't he, Miguel Oliveira? As the riders then get prepped and ready for our penultimate sprint of 2025 here in Portimão. A wink of acknowledgement. He's ready. He's up for the occasion, isn't he? As always, Fabio Quartararo firing away from 3rd place on the grid. Just 2 sprint podiums so far this year for the Frenchman. 3rd in the Sachsenring, 2nd in Catalonia. Can he make it 3 sprint podiums in 2025? As the BMW safety car then peels away at the front and drops off a cliff here. Just spectacular undulation, meets the field immediately as soon as they started to go through the gearbox. The first braking zone is one of the hardest on the entire Grand Prix calendar. A blind entry run down into that 3rd gear first corner at full racing speed. Your front row of the grid then for our 21st sprint of 2025. This is where the sprint era began, of course, right at the start of 2023. Fabio Quartararo on the front row for the 10th time this season. Pedro Acosta, surely a big contender for his first sprint victory here this afternoon. But in this 12-lap battle coming your way in the Algarve International Circuit, firing away from pole position and searching for his 4th sprint win in the last 6 rounds, it's Aprilia's Marco Bezzecchi.